The Epilogue of Paul and Megan. End of an era 2020. Restoring the trust. She will discover late in life, as she and Paul sat talking one day in 2019, that he never forgot their 25th anniversary sweet night either. And further, told her, after they forgave one another that day of confessions, that he never stopped loving her. You already know. She never stopped loving him.
That day was the most precious of all their days in the end. It was 1 year ago on this day, the 11th of July, 2020, that Paul left us for eternity. We all miss him tremendously. Winter of 2021 journal notes. Now, in later years, Megan has a sense that for all the trauma, at least there is now truth and peace. Hindsight is perfect, but we do not live perfect lives, and all of us make mistakes, sin, hurt each other, and so forth. When those things happen, there is only one thing to do: repent and ask forgiveness, or bitterness and hatred will result. It is our individual choices that make the difference. He is gone, now, and life has well seasoned her with discomforts, which tint the glasses in an unnatural light. People of age who have grown old together can weather health circumstances far better than those of age who have had varied, separate pathways. Unique experiences and other people's influences cause a kind of distorted view of what we should deem right in normal daily living. Life gets tainted from other involvements. A marriage is not pure any longer when another has invaded the sacred space. But there are ways to mitigate the effects. That is what Megan and Paul found. After years of being alone, life takes on its habits, which sometimes do not mesh with a fitting together, and when illness and/or dementia are involved, and others or self has severed relationships of marriage, life takes different paths with intrusive tones from living and taking part in others' lives, family dynamics, work history, and general daily living. Expectations of others filter in as human, and in the mind, there is no way to eliminate their effects on thoughts. In aging relationships, especially when there is a great need involved, as in caring for one who is living with illness or suffering from dementia, a retrieval of an old, severed relationship is nearly impossible. However, it is different when two people have grown old together. The normal is the balance they understand. It may be difficult, but there is a continuity from knowing the person and circumstance. In the end, when he needed care, if they had reunited and weathered aging together, she would have taken care of Paul at home until it was not possible any longer. That is what life could have been. And in her mind, what God would have desired for them. Honest memories prevail in the good and the bad times. They come through in caring, without intent to do harm. What is a parable? It is a think about it story with choices to make and understandings to gain. Even though age was catching them up into an end of days, they were in this place, illness aside, dementia foiled. Their love had survived. Living an unconventional romance that in the end held fast to one another. They were in this place together, to have and to hold until death us do part. Divorce didn't matter at all. For them it was in their memories alone, but how wonderful it would be if every marriage could find this beautiful gift in the reel of life, and stay together. Life took its turns with twisted roads that shaped a future of hope and chaos, but there was no road back to the old life with family, or with Paul, and the scars of ending a real marriage and family left indelible memories for all of those involved, especially the children. In the transitions, many wisdom thoughts do not come to the surface, and sometimes it seems there is no choice but to get up and go on into new lives, and perhaps, loves. But it is not the only way. There is a harder way that leads to something more, but in the heat of sorrow and trying to rebuild, that way gets lost, and too often stuffed out of even the realm of possibilities. Megan did not wait. She, too, like the masses, went headlong into a new and promising future, fraught with deception, designed deceptions, to catch a lonely heart. Failures and hurts of the past will either build us, or break us. Even there, sometimes, the injuries are so deep physically, or so traumatic emotionally, it may seem impossible to go on. Hope, they say, springs eternal, but there needs to be faith as well, because hope is not complete without a mustard seed of faith that can grow. In the growth, trying not to make the same mistakes again is the goal. The children, with families of their own, were trying to build a life, and all the past troubles with their parents were baggage they did not need or want to carry. At the time, it was difficult to talk to anyone about the trauma devastating her life, because it involved every aspect of living, which she still had to both deal with and find a way forward. She was an empty nester, which has its own sorry sadness, even without being abandoned. Unfortunately, it is a very sad story and a place in life that many will recognize. This heartache is everywhere. But how does one to get back on the right track of life when so much has happened and others involved have moved on in new relationships or marriage? Megan's storyline shows us the essence of pure hopelessness, surviving through tenacity. Her message? Just don't give up. And don't let hate and bitterness destroy the opportunities forgiveness brings. It is all an individual heart thing. The Epilogue of Megan without Paul from 1983 to 2020. Paul and Megan, the way it should have been. We break the true issue. Trust. Most of the time, not invariably, but most, we can determine how we live and make the right decisions. Megan lived a life laden with misplaced trust. It was her own naivety that got her into so much trouble and why she suffered so much loss and pain. However, that is why this story is so helpful. It reveals how we fall into the ambushes set for us, because of a lonely heart. She, like so many, failed to listen to the warnings of a small voice saying don't, wait, stay, go, or listen, this is dangerous, and if we hear, but do not heed the warnings, well, may be severe consequences to reap, instead of blessings. Open your eyes and ears to filter out the lies and then obey, if you can, but to be sure, it takes strength, courage, and wisdom. That comes from learning to identify the lies so one will not fall into the traps set. The absolute truth of this story is, if Megan would have been honest when she was young, perhaps none of the affairs Paul engaged in would have taken place. And if Paul had told Megan about the last affair before she sold the business in Glen Arbor, everything would have been different. If confession and truth were present, life itself would have taken turns unknown, but with outcomes far different in many aspects, including financial security for her life. Love and broken hearts mended in a far different scenario than could have been. But, as they say, we will never know that outcome. And yet, there is another scenario. If she had followed her intuition and found out about the affair before she sold the store, life would have been stable after a time. Yes, it would have been horrible at the time, but think about the outcomes between the reality and the what-ifs. The comparison is gigantic in difference. Megan could have kept the successful store and built a healthy new life other than what will ensue in the following novel. But there is even more. If patience was employed, perhaps in time, could have brought a far different outcome to Paul and Megan's marriage than what follows. Courage in time, along with forgiveness and willing hearts of a first marriage, may have come back together. Why? Because time has rendered truth. They did still love one another into the last of his days. That is the incredible part. 62 years of heart between them survived all of it. Intersections of choice are depicted in these events. And further, the times have changed with technology. She thought, this is so timely. The bus trip away from Paul was exactly as described, but the dream she had on the bus was just a heart of wishful thinking. However, just suppose that scenario were true. The situations that culminated in the chaos ending their marriage of 25 years, with help from God, and communication by whatever means available, the dream on the bus could have changed their future in history. Today's cell phone communications could have made a total difference in both stories. These were the days before there were cell phones en masse. Who knows? If this story had happened now instead of then, a simple cell call or text message could have accomplished the mission. That would have taken a risky road trip in a century snowstorm out of the equation. Would a cell message have had the same impact as a real rescue? Who knows, it was only a dream. We have so many communication options for making choices today, which were not available then, but they are almost too easy, and there is no real impact to see or feel the devotion required in a circumstance. However, it still may have made all the difference if the call had come with a "please get off the bus when you reach the next station and I'm on my way to get you. I love you, Megan, and I will put everything right forever so we can work it out. I want you to be my wife forever. Please forgive me?" Who knows what might have happened? Nobody is out of touch anymore, and truth and lies could have been better discerned. You can see the blessings that both of them might have unfolded together.
Could they have surmounted these issues? Most likely. But it would have taken hard work to face everything and resolve all of their adultery issues, and if they would commit to doing the hard work of putting their marriage back together, it could have survived. But they gave up and gave in and lost it all, and that is what's so sad about this story. And for so many lives. We do not wait long enough to know for sure. And the consequences devastate entire families all over the world. Often followed by years wasted on other relationships that don't fit. In this story, there could have been years enjoyed in the right fit. Forgiveness is the key. Staying faithful to the trust is the only way it works. Now, we know, there was a basis for renewal. Like a parable, there are lessons on many levels. Thoughtful analysis brings wisdom, when you can see the mistakes made in 2020 hindsight. If we have the options, years may be a joyful celebration instead of living in the dregs of what disasters may lie ahead. Trust honored is the answer. Trust broken destroys. Their story is not unique. Many marriages and families have suffered in divorce situations. If only we could see as hindsight and use the wisdom of those insights. The author hopes this novel helps someone make choices they can look back on 20, 30, or more, even 60 years later and say, we, or I, made the right choice. The point of any parable is to get one's thinking in a proper perspective to the situation at hand. In this storyline, a variety of different lessons apply. We all have life patterns, good and bad. The battle is to choose the right of it all. The lessons of the parable are, perhaps a bit of patience could make a difference, even apart from one another. If real love is there, miracles can happen. There was so much to stake a future and retirement on if they had not been so short-sighted. Keep the trust instead of breaking it. Don't throw away the efforts already laid in foundation, and at least try to find a way back. There are all kinds of enticements to seduce us in a wrong decision and choice. Finding the help to stay on the right path is difficult in the face of all the options available for promiscuity and adultery. The familiars are a name Megan has given those enticements and deceptions because they use every kind of sensory perception to get a person compromised. Megan and Paul had a future if they had reached out to it, but Paul was captive to something being perpetrated on his mind and body of 48 years of age, and he succumbed, for a time, to outside seductive forces, breaking the trust of marriage all the way to divorce and remarriage. Yes, her world fell apart in 1983, and Paul married the affair after the divorce. All true. She gave up the hope of a future out of condemnation for her own sins, and lies to her spirit, that there was no hope and pure despair took over. What will happen next changes her life in far worse events than she had just come through. And this is the lesson. We cannot see the future. We give up too soon the present and forget the good of the past. However, in the true 2020 hindsight there was always a pathway other, and it would have been the high road, the one less traveled. Megan and Paul's children were a gift to their marriage, and yet they failed them in living up to the ideal as parents. They could have made everything all right. Instead, their legacy wounded and scared the trust of marriage and family for them. With this action, she was the one who broke the ultimate final marriage trust. After nearly 3 years of separation, this action set in motion the misfits of relationships that followed in her life for many years. But through it all, for those 25 years, and until his passing, 62 years after they married, even though they never reunited other than dear friends, still loved one another. How can that be? Ask a lot of people and they will tell you it is totally true. Love does not die, they simply altered it in the process of lies. This is the lesson. Broken trusts cause consequences. In love, and living life, business, family, all of it stems back to breaking trusts. Readers, you may have noticed how many chapters end with her falling asleep in the condition of her thoughts and circumstances. That is intentional. Why? Because in emotional distress, rest is the key of many keys to surviving and growing into a person of health once more. Divorce is among the highest stressors in life. In this storyline, Megan lost her husband, their marriage, her financial security, business, and livelihood. You have read how devastating it was. But, through hard work, saving and sometimes pure tenacity to survive, in 1986, she opened another artisan gift store in Ludington, similar to the one she sold in Glen Arbor. And this one had an attached cottage behind. It was the right path. This novel series is about hope for a better life after chaos. Megan had shown us the way she did it. Now you be encouraged for yourself.